Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 746, Battle to Break the Formation, 8. Han Li rejoiced at seeing the bronze lantern seized, much to the green-robed woman's despair. In an instant, her face paled with an expression of furious alarm. Soon after, she raised her arms, sweeping a white mist around her. The white lotus below her began to wildly revolve, producing a lotus mirage that appeared as large as a mountain. Once the white light holding the lantern returned to the cloud, the huge lotus mirage had already launched after it in pursuit. The purple cloud then transformed into a large purple net and dropped down. In the next instant, the lotus struck the net, releasing a glow of purple and white light. Silvermoon's sweet chuckle soon followed. After the purple net was released, the white light faded away to reveal Silvermoon. She laughed as she held onto the ancient flower basket. Its interior shined with white light as it rigidly trapped the bronze lantern. Once the green-robed woman's spiritual sense was wiped from it, it would be capable of being used by anyone. But before Han Li could bask in his excitement, a silhouette staggered towards them and spotted both Han Li and the green-robed woman engaged in battle. The silhouette shouted to Han Li in panic, "Fellow Daoist Han, quickly run! A Mulan divine sage has arrived. He's already killed fellow Daoist Lu. Hurry and run!" This silhouette turned out to be Old Man Ma, but his hair was disheveled and one of his arms was missing. A Mulan divine sage. Han Li felt his heart drop upon hearing this. Just as he thought to ask further of the matter, Old Man Ma flew away in a flash of white light, not daring to stay a moment longer. But at that moment, an indifferent man's voice soon arrived. "You're too late. I've already found you. You had abandoned your arm to escape calamity, but let's see what other secret techniques you have. Surely you didn't refine a substitution puppet out of your other arm as well? If that's the case, I will truly hold you in admire, Yi. Is this not the bright origin lantern? You cunning scoundrel, your courage is quite great. A little fox such as yourself dares to take a lineage treasure of the Mulan." The words were spoken in quick succession, and the speaker of the voice soon arrived before them. A silver streak of light shot out from the sea of mist in a seemingly slow manner, but it instantly arrived before Silvermoon. Silvermoon's complexion grew deathly pale and she hastily waved her arm, summoning a purple net in front of her. At that same moment, she instantly took off without a further thought. The silver streak paused for just a moment before immediately transforming into a large silver hand. It forcibly took the purple cloud lace in its grasp and formed a fist before striking at the air in the direction that Silvermoon had fled. As Silvermoon flew off in a streak of yellow light, she was suddenly struck by a silver ball of light out of seemingly nowhere. With a miserable wail, her yellow light disappeared and she fell from the sky. But in her cunning, she gritted her teeth and bore through the pain, throwing the ancient flower basket towards Han Li in a streak of white light. "You're courting death." The man's voice grew furious and in a flicker of light, the silver hand split into two with one chasing the flower basket, and the other chasing after the falling Silvermoon in an attempt to crush her. The action was conducted as swiftly as a flash of lightning. Silvermoon turned pale with fright and she hastily attempted to draw on her magic power to escape. However, silver light flashed from her body and she found herself incapable of drawing any of her magic power. That surprise strike from before had not only heavily injured her, but it had placed a simple restriction on her body. Although it could be easily broken, she was caught by surprise and didn't have the time to dispel it. The huge silver hand approached her with the momentum of a falling mountain, and she felt her heart tremble. She could only shut her eyes as she waited for death, but at that moment, she heard thunder roar behind her. With an arm holding her by the waist, she had somehow escaped from the silver hand's grasp. "We're going." Han Li made a clear appearance before disappearing from sight with Silvermoon in tow. The huge silver hand had missed its mark by just a sliver. In the next moment, Han Li appeared 100 meters away at the edge of the mist with a sullen expression. He carried Silver Moon in one hand, and the huge sword blazing with azure and purple flames in the other. Yi! Lightning movement! An astonished voice came from the huge silver hand. As for the other hand, it returned with the flower basket in its grasp. The two silver hands then combined together in a brilliant glow of light, disappearing to reveal a middle-aged spell warrior in scholar robes. He held onto the purple cloud lace with one hand, and he grabbed the ancient flower basket with the other. He was examining Han Li in the distance with a calm expression. When Old Man Ma had seen this person appear, his face became deathly pale, and despite the light that continuously pulsed from his body, he didn't dare to flee. Han Li's gaze flickered as he carefully examined the very first late nascent soul stage cultivator he had seen for the first time. Apart from the few sparse cultivators that managed to reach deity transformation stage, late nascent soul stage cultivators were peak existences in the cultivation world. At that moment, the middle-aged spell warrior glanced around and spotted the green-robed woman surnamed Le. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the ancient flower basket containing the bronze lantern towards her. Many thanks for Divine Sage Zhong's assistance. Had Brother Zhong not come, the green-robed woman was delighted that she managed to regain possession of the bronze lamp and felt immense relief. Even as arrogant and cold as she may be, she was facing one of the 3 Mulan divine sages, and she didn't dare to offend him in the slightest. The scholarly middle-aged man calmly said, "It's nothing. I've simply heard that the Heavenly South cultivators were sending reinforcements towards this grand formation. After hearing about Heavenweep's death, I grew somewhat worried and came over to take a look. It'd be best to give those from the state of Great Jin a reasonable explanation as we are currently intertwined with them. But since our enemy is capable of using lightning movement, it is no wonder even Sage Le has a problem dealing with him." Afterwards, he turned to look at Han Li and asked, "That small fox is yours? It is quite courageous to dare to act against our Mulan's lineage treasure. Since you're her master, then I'd best deal with the both of you." Han Li narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. He snorted and icily replied, "Your tone is quite arrogant, but even if we didn't touch that lantern, would you still let us go free? I don't know if you have the skill to take my life." When the scholarly man heard this, his gaze swept past the huge sword in Han Li's hand. His face revealed astonishment upon seeing the azure and purple flames tangle against one another, but soon, he chuckled as if he hadn't seen it. "It has been many years since a cultivator dared to say that in front of me. Sage Le, I'll hand that one-armed cultivator over there to you. As for our young friend capable of lightning movement, I'll be personally dealing with him. Let's see just how long he can last." Ruthless intent revealed from the man's face as his body suddenly blurred and silver light flashed from both his sides. Suddenly, 2 exact replicas of the scholarly man appeared at his side with the exact same clothes and face. They both stared at Han Li as if he were already dead. Han Li felt his breath run cold. He quickly swept his spiritual sense and couldn't find any difference between the 2 incarnations and the original. Be it their aura of cultivation or appearance, they were completely the same. Despite the dread he felt in his heart, Han Li patted Silver Moon's shoulder and quickly whispered something to her. Silver Moon obediently nodded. Having already dispelled a restriction on her body, she returned to the form of a small fox in a flash of white light and swiftly entered Han Li's sleeve. At that moment, the 3 scholarly men swept their sleeves and slowly made their way towards Han Li. Their movements clearly appeared relaxed, but in a matter of only 3 steps, they had already arrived only 30 meters away from Han Li. With a vastly changed expression, Han Li flapped his wings without another moment of thought and disappeared from sight. "You want to leave, but where can you run?" the middle of the 3 scholarly men said with a chuckle. Afterwards, the 3 of them flickered with silver light, and pursued him with a relaxed stride. With 2 steps taken in the air, the 3 of them also disappeared. When the pale old man Ma saw this, he suddenly leapt away at great speed, wordlessly transforming into a streak of white light as he tore through the skies. The green-robed woman sneered at the sight of this and formed an incantation gesture with her hands before chasing after him in a breeze of wind. She no longer had any worry of Han Li, knowing that a divine sage was chasing after him. Additionally, this old cultivator wasn't capable of lightning movement, so he definitely wouldn't be able to escape her. As for the grand formation in the area, it was hardly effective against a nascent soul cultivator. Its restrictions were easily swept away. In an empty wilderness with a darkened sky, claps of thunder echoed through the air with flashes of silver light, each flash revealing the figure of a distraught Han Li. He was hurriedly glancing behind him with an expression of resentment. "Silver Moon, how many days have we fled?" Silver Moon's voice worriedly spoke in Han Li's mind. "It should be about 4 days already. If Master rests for more than a few minutes, this late nascent soul stage cultivator will immediately catch up. Is there truly no way to escape his spiritual sense mark? This is far too dangerous. Although you have the myriad-year spirit milk to restore your magic power, you've almost exhausted your divine Devilbane lightning. Without the lightning movement, you won't be able to escape his pursuit and movements. Such profound abilities are on par with instantaneous movement itself. There are hardly any differences to be said. Were it not for Master's shrewdness to completely avoid fighting and continuously flee, we would have been tangled down without a method of escape." Han Li wryly smiled and resentfully said, "The trace of a late nascent soul stage spiritual sense can be tracked down by a couple hundred of kilometers. Although my own spiritual sense is beyond that of a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator, it is still quite lacking to a true late nascent soul stage cultivator. After all, I didn't learn the great development technique to completion. I haven't been able to get my hands on the last layers of the technique. Once this chase ends, I'll immediately head to the far west and find the final layers of that chant with certainty. In the past, I've never had this problem because my spiritual sense was always superior to my opponents. But now, my hands are tied and I find myself helpless in spite of whatever methods I use." Chapter 747, Reputation Rising. Chapter 747, Reputation Rising. Silver Moon worriedly muttered, "Then how about Master use Blood Shadow evasion? In a single use, he'll be able to traverse over 50 kilometers. Surely you'll be able to break free of his spiritual sense tracking." Although Silver Moon hadn't mentioned anything about Han Li saving her life, she was touched by it nonetheless, causing her tone to feel particularly concerned. Having already considered the matter, he wryly smiled and said, "A single time won't be enough. I'll have to use the Blood Shadow evasion at least 2 times in succession, perhaps even 3, and exhaust all my remaining divine Devilbane lightning for a good chance at escaping. Although my magic power is slightly greater than ordinary early nascent soul stage cultivators, it is still quite dangerous. Even if I come out unscathed, I will be weakened for quite a long while. Now that no other methods will work, this is the only option left." "Master, you..." Han Li's expression suddenly changed and he turned his head behind him. He gloomily snorted. "That person is grower closer to the second. I can no longer continue like this. I can only take the risk." When Silver Moon heard this, she chose to keep silent. Soon after, Han Li deeply sighed and his hands quickly blurred as they formed a series of strange hand incantations. At that same moment, his body began to pulse with azure light and an astonishing spiritual pressure suddenly released from his body. He then spat a mist of scarlet blood essence from his mouth. It scattered in the air and seeped into the azure light surrounding his body, transforming it into a demonic fusion of crimson and azure light. Soon, Han Li's hands and face became dark red, and countless threads of crimson blood began to spurt from all over his skin, making for a frightful sight. Han Li didn't seem to mind this in the least and continued forming hand incantations at great speed. Spitting out another 2 mouthfuls of blood essence, Han Li became completely enveloped in a mist of blood and could hardly be seen. At that moment, radiance began to shine from the distant sky. 3 silver balls of light were slowly moving towards them. Silhouettes could be seen moving from within them. They were Divine Sage Zhong and his 2 incarnations. Their scholar robes fluttered as they calmly flew in Han Li's direction. However, they moved at an incredible speed in spite of their appearances. In an instant, they had already traversed a distance of over 400 meters and could see Han Li from the naked eye. "Yi!" One of the men wore a surprised expression, but he soon frowned. The azure crimson blood mist suddenly bursted with dazzling crimson light. As Han Li stood in place, he coldly glanced at the incoming Mulan Divine Sage before unfolding the thunderstorm wings behind his back. In the following moment, space itself warped around him, and Han Li's figure blurred from sight. A sharp ear-piercing shriek faded into the distance as suddenly as it had appeared. The three scholarly men simultaneously wore a face of astonishment, and the three glanced at one another before joining together with the man at the center. With a flash of silver light, the three men then returned into one. He immediately shut his eyes and released his spiritual sense in the direction that shriek had traveled in. The scholarly man glanced where Han Li had disappeared and revealed a trace of surprise. What kind of movement technique can travel 50 kilometers in an instant? It seems similar to the Devil Dao's blood movement, but the distance is astonishing. Having chased Han Li for several days, the divine sage had experienced quite a bit of surprise at having continuously pursued him for several days without rest. Even if an early nascent soul cultivator was capable of lightning movement, their magic power should have long been exhausted, leaving them helpless to their fates, unless one possessed a heavenly treasure capable of instantly restoring one's magic power, or a secret technique that drained from one's vitality. Now that Han Li employed a strange movement technique, it appeared he hadn't shown his full strength before this. But this was no matter. Although he had already traveled 50 kilometers, Divine Sage Zhong was still tracking him with his spiritual sense. It would only be some more time before he caught up. Just as the scholarly man threw this, he narrowed his eyes, and his spiritual sense targeted Han Li once more. With a cold smirk, his body glowed with white light before setting off once more to give chase. But at that moment, the scholarly man suddenly felt Han Li's aura mysteriously disappear once more. He ceased his movements in shock. He suddenly thought of something and hastily expanded the perimeter of his spiritual sense by twofold before spotting Han Li once more. Yet before he could set off once more, Han Li's aura disappeared yet again. This time, the scholarly man simply stood in place with a face of amazement. Although his spiritual sense was vastly powerful, it could only reach a distance of a little over 100 kilometers. He could forcibly stretch his spiritual sense to acquire an approximate understanding of the environment, but it was beyond him to track someone at that distance. Of course, unless something impossible occurred, like Han Li waiting in place for him to sweep his spiritual sense past him. Han Li was a truly cunning opponent. The moment he felt the divine sage's spiritual sense speed past him, he employed that strange movement technique several times in succession and slipped away. This was perhaps the first time in many years since the scholarly man had ever been played around with in this manner. He was a magnificent Mulan divine sage. Once it became known that an early nascent soul cultivator was able to escape him, his reputation would be greatly tarnished. However, he didn't have any intention to immediately continue the chase. Without any spiritual sense tracking along with Han Li's strange techniques, it would be difficult to track Han Li down again, even with the use of secret techniques. Not to mention that he had already wasted several days chasing Han Li down. He couldn't continue the pursuit, especially given the uncertainty of success. After all, since he, a divine sage, had made an appearance, the other late nascent soul stage cultivators in the heavenly south could no longer remain idle. He needed to return and join with the other Mulan divine sages in preparation. If they were jointly attacked by enemy late nascent soul stage cultivators, it would be extremely dangerous. After pondering for a long while with a restless state of mind, his face grew sullen and he flew back in the direction from where he came. In the blink of silver light, he disappeared from sight. In an area 150 kilometers away, Han Li was flying through the sky in a streak of azure light in a different direction from before. He was continuously taking out medicine bottles from all over his body and pouring whatever vitality healing medicine he had down his throat. His complexion was deathly pale and his eyes were listless. Silvermoon's voice echoed through Han Li's mind. "Master, are you all right?" Using the blood shadow evasion 3 times in succession was truly dangerous. Were it not for the many medicine pills Master had taken along the way, the third use of the technique would have... It's nothing. Although I've lost much blood essence, fortunately, I refined a few medicine pills in the past. So long as I consume them and properly rest for a few months, my cultivation should be fully restored. Han Li slowly replied with an exhausted voice. Having heard this, Silvermoon sighed and hesitantly asked, "Will you be returning to Soaring Sky City?" With a tone of helplessness, Han Li said, "Of course not. With a situation this dire, I must at least restore my cultivation before heading back to the Nine Nations Union. Otherwise, The ghost spirit sect and whatever other enemies I have will be able to easily plot against me. I cannot brave such risks. Fortunately, I don't need to seek out an area with spirit veins, given the efficacy of the medicine pills alone. I simply need to find an uninhabited area and rest for a while. Furthermore, the bamboo cloud's warm swords are still tainted by the azure lantern flames. Although I've used the purple apex flames to forcibly restrain them, I must think of a method to remove the azure flames entirely, or there will be later consequences. Silvermoon smiled and said, "That bronze lantern was a lineage treasure belonging to the Mulan tribes, so it should have some closeness to the ghost Dao. This servant is confident that so long as Master spends some time, he will be able to refine those flames entirely." Regardless of what is said, the purple apex flames possess truly remarkable abilities. Han Li bitterly smiled and calmly replied, "With how things played out, these problems can only be solved slowly in the end." Afterwards, Han Li spoke no more and used the remaining spiritual power in his body to urge the light around him to fly faster. After flying for a day, Han Li ceased his flight and dropped down to an unremarkable valley. The Mulan divine sage should be unwilling to search this far away. He glanced around several times and found 2 suitable barren hills. Not only were they completely lacking any spiritual power, but they were also completely bare and inseparable from the other hills in the area. Han Li cautiously swept his spiritual sense past a 50-kilometer radius. Finding that there were no cultivators or spell warriors nearby, he felt safe and released Silvermoon. The small silver fox then obeyed Han Li's orders without any objections and twirled around, sweeping a yellow light around her and enveloping Han Li within it. In a flash of light, she brought Han Li directly with her into the side of the hill. The valley became desolate once more. With Han Li brought to the center of the mountain through Silvermoon's earth movement technique, azure sword chi was shot out in a dense barrage, quickly carving out a crude, 10-meter wide room. In a blur, Han Li entered it and promptly sat down cross-legged. Not long after, Han Li opened his eyes and azure light began to revolve around him. Over 10 medicine bottles of various sizes laid before him. He needed to first refine the medicine pills he had taken before he dared to take any more medicine. As such, he calmly secluded himself as he restored his vitality. However, Han Li didn't anticipate that the damage to his vitality would be far greater than he had predicted. The amount of time he would need to recover would be much longer. As time dryly passed by, he meditated and focused on recovering with the aid of medicine pills. After around half a year slowly passing by, Han Li still remained within the center of the mountain. However, countless changes began to surge around the world. A battle to the death between cultivators and spell warriors was just off the horizon. And beyond Han Li's knowledge, his fame as the Drifting Cloud Sect's Elder Han had spread widely not only throughout the cultivators of the Heavenly South, but also through the ranks of the spell warriors. Whenever they heard of his name, none dared to hold him in contempt. His repute of matching a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator was already well known. Chapter 748. Return. Ever since the battle at the Yellow Dragon Mountains, the 3 Mulan sages had taken the initiative to lead the war effort. In only half a month, they had already managed to push all the way towards soaring Heaven City. Caught unprepared, the 9 Nations Union could only stand alone against the incoming enemies. Fortunately, the Grand Elder of the 9 Nations Union, Wei Wuya, one of the 3 great cultivators in the Heavenly South, had recently received word to hurry to the city. Relying on the city's grand formation, he was able to support it for an entire month against the spell warriors' armies. However, the city faced the combined might of 3 divine sages, a few black-robed cultivators, and 8 giant beasts. As such, it didn't take long for the grand formation to be destroyed and for soaring Heaven City to fall to the hands of spell warriors. But fortunately for the 9 Nations Union, a majority of their forces in the city had already withdrew to the neighboring countries of Yu and Beiliang. At that time, reinforcements from the Righteous and Devil Dao as well as those from the Heavenly Dao Alliance had arrived. With the 4 united superpowers of the Heavenly South, they managed to temporarily hold back the Mulan vanguard after a few small-scale battles. However, it was clear that none of these battles were a true battle to the death. Once soaring Heaven City was seized by the Mulan, it immediately became the first stronghold in the heavenly south for the spell warriors. An unending stream of Mulan spell warriors began to stream in from the Mulan plains in great number. Each of the Mulan tribes sent their elite to the other tribes in hopes they would be able to occupy the heavenly south, apart from the greatest Mulan tribe, the Golden Sun tribe, who were occupied with monitoring the movements of the soaring tribes in the Mulan plains. Once the Mulan finished gathering together, they would begin conducting battles to the death. Of course, the heavenly south wasn't about to accept this occupation without resistance. In addition to the forces of the four superpowers, unaffiliated sects also sent men, and even a few vagrant cultivators participated in the war effort, all knowing just how important the coming battle was. Even the various clans in the heavenly south took the initiative to send their own forces to support the war. With these forces taking in, the four superpowers immediately moved towards the border of the state of Beiliang and the state of Yu. Through the use of grand techniques, they were able to construct a huge stone city overnight, treating it as a fortress to resist the spell warriors' advance. During that time, they also made arrangements for the various sect and vagrant cultivators in their armies so that they may drive away the Mulan from the heavenly south in a single move. Like the calm before the storm, battles between both sides ceased, and they made use of this opportunity for further preparations. And during this time, Han Li's feats during his time at the Yellow Dragon Mountains had already begun to spread. Of course, he couldn't have known that in addition to himself, Old Man Ma had also survived from the battle that day. However, in the face of the green-robed woman's wind movement techniques, he could only abandon his mortal body and flee back to the Nine Nations Union only with his nascent soul. As for core formation cultivators, Yingning and the Murong brothers had both survived. Once they saw the battle was lost, they all took the initiative to flee. With these survivors, Han Li's feat of killing the black-robed nascent soul cultivator in an instant became known by others, and his reputation soared. As for the controlling spirit sect spy, Jiyu Shuangpu, his true identity was only known by a select few high-grade cultivators amongst the superpowers. It was not widely spread. Of course, what truly made Han Li's reputation soar was the news that he managed to escape from the grasp of a Mulan divine sage. When divine sage Zhong had returned to the spell warrior army, his failure to kill Han Li had caused quite a commotion amongst the spell warriors. The scholarly man, as a result, had given Han Li a very high assessment in order to save face and avoid embarrassment, rating his abilities slightly beyond that of a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator. Naturally, none doubted the assessment of a divine sage. With the addition of the many abilities Han Li displayed in his battle with the green-robed woman surnamed Le, and his earlier victory over the heavenly wind tribe sage Mu, resulting in the destruction of his physical body, his repute amongst the spell warrior armies were even greater than those of the heavenly south cultivators. Of course, this information eventually made its way to the heavenly south and had caused quite a ruckus as well. Needless to say, many other obscure nascent soul cultivators had also made a name for themselves in that way. After all, a cultivator's true abilities could only be truly measured in battle. Eventually, over half a year had passed, and Han Li had finally emerged from his seclusion in a valley in the state of Yu. Feng Tuor was a foundation establishment stage spell warrior from a small Mulan tribe. Although he was worshipped as an immortal master amongst his people, he was now merely a common foot soldier in Soaring Heaven City. He was currently stationed on a fortress on the border of the state of Beiliang. He had to patrol an area of over 100 kilometers with a party of Qi condensation spell warriors in between the fortress and the city to warn of any sudden attacks by the heavenly south cultivators. After patrolling for about half a day, it was about time for him to be relieved by another spell warrior. Once he patrolled a few tens more kilometers, he would be able to return. Feng Tuor pondered for a moment, thinking about the tens of spirit stones he had received in the past 2 days. With those spirit stones, he felt confident he would be able to break through the bottleneck to mid-foundation establishment stage. He couldn't help but feel an impatience to return to cultivating and become stronger before the next battle. If he would be able to acquire a few merits in the upcoming battle, he would surely be rewarded with an appropriate number of spirit stones. This spell warrior was indulging in fantasy as he slowly flew on his magic tool, guiding a party of Qi condensation stage spell warriors. At that moment, he happened to fly across an ordinary cliff that few ever visited. When he thought to brush through the area, he suddenly saw a flash of azure light emerge from the rock, revealing an azure-robed youth that appeared to be in his early 20s. The youth glanced at the party of spell warriors with a cold, emotionless expression. When Feng Tuo clearly saw this youth, he swept his spiritual sense past him and felt his breath turn cold. Heavenly South Cultivator. His at least core formation stage. I cannot see the depth of his cultivation. Quickly, withdraw. This person isn't someone we can handle. Feng Tuo acted rather keenly and hastily called for his 6 low-grade party members to retreat. He then tossed an exquisite spirit beast pouch through the air. At that same moment, a streak of red light shot out of the pouch and spun in the air before shooting in the direction of the fortress. At that moment, a beautiful white-clothed woman appeared in a flash of white light. Red light suddenly appeared near her and she chuckled before spitting out a fragrant pink mist and forming a barrier around the streak of red light. With a clear cry, the red light faded away to reveal a small red bird floating in the air. The young woman extended her hand and had the small bird fly into it. Having seen this, Feng Tuo felt his heart drop. Unable to look after the others, he quickly formed a hand incantation and had his body glow with yellow light and instantly shot several kilometers away by using a life-saving technique. But at that moment, the youth narrowed his eyes and snorted. The sound was ordinary as it could be, but when Feng Tuo heard this, he felt his ears ring and his mind grow dark as he felt the very earth twirl around him. The other Qi condensation stage cultivators didn't fare any better either. In the instant the youth infused magic power with his snort, the spell warriors dropped to the ground in succession. As for Feng Tuo, the young woman arrived by his side in a blur and lifted him into the air by his neck. Once she landed in front of him, she sweetly smiled at the youth and said, "Master, this person is their leader. He should know a bit more." Needless to say, these two were Han Li and Silver Moon, who had discovered that the state of Yu had fallen during their time in seclusion. They already had a rough understanding of what had happened. He already had Silver Moon sneak into the nearby area and gather some information. Just as he was passing through this area, he discovered Feng Tuo's party patrolling nearby. Han Li felt his heart stir and decided to capture the party of spell warriors, questioning them about the surrounding affairs and saving him the hassle of treading into any areas that may be guarded by a divine sage. Combined with Silver Moon's bewitchment techniques, Han Li's Dream Tear technique allowed him to easily acquire what he wanted. Han Li greatly sighed with relief. The 3 divine sages took alternative turns guarding the border, but this span of the border was far from the fortress the divine sage was guarding and was being guarded by only a Mulan sage. With Han Li's cultivation, he should have no problem sneaking past him. Han Li then looked down at the captives with a frown. In order to acquire the information as quickly as possible, Han Li had used a forceful method to extract information, resulting in a near total annihilation of their minds. Even if they woke up, they would empty husks. With a light sigh, he turned each of the spell warriors into ash with a fireball. He then took to the skies in an azure streak of light and took Silver Moon in tow. On the border of the state of Beiliang, in a remote building in the newly constructed city of Skyfirst, Han Li's senior martial brother Lu was currently talking with a few other high-grade cultivators of the Heavenly South cultivators. However, he appeared absent-minded as if he were worrying about something. Since he had already battled against the spell warrior vanguard, he could already return to the Drifting Cloud sect. However, the sect currently only had 2 nascent soul cultivators. He couldn't allow the silver-haired old man, his senior martial brother, to lead the Drifting Cloud sect disciples into battle, so he took the initiative to remain and look after his sect disciples. Of course, the other reason he was unwilling to depart was because of the recently famous Drifting Cloud sect's elder Han. His whereabouts were still unknown. He was worried that Han Li either met mishap or perhaps found himself incapable of returning. Nevertheless, Han Li had already proven himself capable of killing other nascent soul cultivators and even escaping the pursuit of a Mulan divine sage. Elder Lu could hardly believe Han Li was such a capable individual. After all, others might not know this, but he personally knew that Han Li had just condensed a nascent soul several years ago. How was it possible that he had developed such heaven-defying abilities in such a short amount of time? Even a Mulan divine sage had appraised him to be a level slightly above that of a mid-nascent soul cultivator. Could it be that the Drifting Cloud sect had truly collected a treasure? Was junior martial brother Han a cultivation genius that appeared once in 10,000 years? As of current, Lu Luo was sitting in the hall as he pondered about this matter, oblivious to what the others were saying. Chapter 749, An Adopted Sister. A white-haired old man sitting across from Lu Luo politely asked, "Brother Lu, did you receive any information about Elder Han?" He was an early nascent soul cultivator by the name of Shu Changjing, an elder of the Heaven Dao Alliance's Water Mirage sect, and a longtime acquaintance of Lu Luo. He had arrived at Sky First City the day before. After a moment of pause, Lu Luo smiled and answered, "There is no news for the time being. But it seems that Brother Shu is showing quite a bit of interest in Brother Han." Shu Changjing chuckled. "It is only natural. From your tone, it seems that others have also asked the same. This should come as no surprise. Before I arrived at Sky First City, I've already heard many rumors with regard to fellow Daoist Han. TCH. An early nascent soul cultivator was actually able to escape a Mulan divine sage's pursuit. This isn't something that the likes of us are capable of. Furthermore, I've also heard that fellow Daoist Han had condensed a nascent soul only a few years ago. If that was true, then it'd be all the more shocking." As the old man spoke, the other cultivators nearby glanced at each other and turned their curious eyes towards Lu Luo. They were all interested in whatever rumors related to Han Li, not to mention the hearsay that Han Li was only a newly ascended nascent soul cultivator. That was something they had yet to hear anyone confirm. Lu Luo hesitated for a moment. Then, having recalled that this was a fact already known to quite a few people, he honestly replied, "It is true. Junior Marshal Brother Han is a newly ascended nascent soul cultivator." The entire hall began to stir. There were even a few people that gasped in surprise. Amazed, Shu Changjing spoke with even greater admiration. "Since Elder Han possesses vast abilities at such a young age, surely he has a great chance to later rise to late nascent soul stage. I must congratulate Brother Lu. The Drifting Cloud sect will soon experience an era of prosperity, and in the future, a great cultivator will be joining the ranks of our Heavenly Dao Alliance." The others felt mostly the same and began to speak words of praise. Lu Luo felt somewhat pleased by this, but he uttered some humble remarks nonetheless. A middle-aged man with thick straight eyebrows frowned and said, "But Brother Lu, although Elder Han managed to escape the hands of a divine sage, I fear that his injuries must be severe. Why else hasn't he appeared until now? Brother Lu should probably send some men to find him. If you are lacking hands, I am able to send some of my sect disciples to assist you." His tone of voice seemed emotionless. Lu Luo couldn't help but grow tense upon hearing those words. But he soon calmly replied, "I am not too sure about his circumstances, but I am sure that he is merely recovering from his injuries in concealment." As someone who lived for several hundred years, Lu Luo was able to clearly see the middle-aged man's envy. He was an elder of the #1 sect in the Heavenly Dao Alliance, the Phoenix's Cry sect. They were the sect that had the Dao companion cultivators that were capable of rivaling the three great cultivators of the Heavenly South. There were few other reasons why they stood at the top of the alliance. Now that he heard that a Drifting Cloud sect would later be able to enter late nascent soul stage, his mood turned for the worse. But from his expression, it appeared as if he were actually concerned, so none could say much about it. Just as the atmosphere turned awkward, a streak of red light suddenly entered the room, much to the surprise of those present. It circled once around before flying towards Lu Luo. With a face full of surprise, Lu Luo waved at the red light and it burst into a ball of flames before dropping into his hand. After he immersed his spiritual sense into it, delight appeared on his face. Junior Marshal Brother Han entered the city. He is currently at my sect's camp. I must take my leave. Forcefully suppressing his excitement, he gave a brief explanation before hurriedly departing. The others were left dumbstruck for a time after seeing him leave in a blur, each of them wearing all sorts of expressions. They didn't expect that the legendary Elder Han would appear now. Shu Changjing twirled his beard as he wore a pensive expression. As for the middle-aged man, he appeared calm, but if one looked closely, one could spot a trace of gloominess from his face. Although Sky First City was a newly constructed city, it was where the various sects of the four superpowers stationed their forces, each faction taking up a different section of the city. As for the middle section of the city, it was public grounds where a few famous vagrant cultivators lived. The Heavenly Dao Alliance was situated in the west section of the city, with the Drifting Cloud sect occupying an area of about 5 acres in the southmost portion. Over 200 Drifting Cloud sect disciples occupied it, consisting of 7 core formation cultivators and the rest being at foundation establishment stage, a majority of the Drifting Cloud sect's forces. Han Li was currently sitting in a wooden chair at the center of the main hall in the Drifting Cloud sect's camp. He was holding his chin in hand as he wore a calm expression. At his side stood 2 core formation cultivators, the Fire Cloud Mountain Lord, a red-clothed old man, and the White Phoenix Mountain Lord, the woman surnamed Song. They were both waiting at his side in a solemn and respectful manner, but complicated expressions occasionally surfaced from their faces. At that moment, Lu Luo hurriedly rushed into the hall and spotted Han Li. He promptly beamed with joy as he approached him. "Junior Marshal Brother Han, you've finally returned. It's been over half a year since I've seen you. You've had me worried." Han Li stood up and returned the smile. "Sorry to worry you, but my vitality was injured at the time. I had no choice but to recover for a time. However, I heard news that Soaring Heaven City is no longer under our control. I was quite worried for you as well. It is good that nothing bad has happened." Lu Luo wore a relieved expression, but he then swept his gaze across the hall and his expression grew sullen. "Where are the other martial nephews? Why haven't they greeted you?" The red-clothed old man respectfully answered, reporting to Marshal Uncle, "The others are on rotation today." Lu Luo's expression then relaxed. "Oh, so it was like that. Then it can't be helped." At that moment, Han Li said with a smile, "When I returned, I discovered that I had become quite famous. Could you tell me something about the rumors? There seem to be many of them." On his return, he was quite surprised to hear many of the rumors about him. Lu Luo chuckled. "I was just thinking of talking to you about this." As he was about to continue, he suddenly glanced at the red-clothed old man and the woman standing at the side. "You two may leave. I am going to have a discussion with your martial uncle Han alone." The two didn't dare to disobey and they hastily withdrew. However, when the woman surnamed Song walked out, she glanced once more at Han Li before departing. Han Li felt somewhat puzzled by this, but he turned a blind eye to this. Ever since the woman surnamed Song saw him, her expression had been odd, as if she had something she wanted to say to him. However, she was always hesitant to do so. While this did baffle Han Li, he had no intention to take the initiative to ask about it. Seeing that the 2 martial nephews had withdrawn, Lu Luo bitterly smiled and complained, "Junior Marshal Brother, you've spent quite a bit of effort hiding your vast abilities from Senior Marshal Brother Cheng and me. Why didn't you tell us about them earlier?" Han Li shook his head and helplessly said, "Senior Marshal Brother Lu should know perfectly well that I condensed a nascent soul only a few years ago. Wouldn't I seem boastful speaking of any great abilities?" Lu Luo chuckled and wore a strange smile. "That's enough. There is no need for Junior Marshal Brother to be so modest. Although it was our enemies who evaluated your abilities, their assessment should be too far off. Yet, what truly surprised my Senior Marshal Brother and I was how you managed to steal away that female nascent soul cultivator from the Masked Moon sect. You truly have our admiration." Han Li's expression stirred and he worriedly asked, "What? You've already seen Wanna?" Before Han Li and Nangong Wan departed, he had given her a jade slip, providing an ambiguous description of her identity. But when he heard Lu Luo, it seemed he already knew everything. Seeing the worry from Han Li's face, Lu Luo beamed and said, "That's right. Fairy Nangong already explained everything to Senior Marshal Brother Cheng. There is no need to worry about anything." Han Li frowned and puzzledly asked, "Senior Marshal Brother Lu means to say?" Lu Luo blinked before happily saying, "Ah, so Junior Marshal Brother still doesn't know. Several months ago, the Masked Moon sect suddenly spread information that Fairy Nangong had suffered inner demon backlash during cultivation and had lost her life, and that her engagement to the Flowing Mind sect's Wei Lycan was dissolved. Also, Senior Marshal Brother Cheng has recognized Wanna as his sworn sister and intends for the two of you to become Dao companions. What does Junior Marshal Brother Han think?" Han Li was dumbfounded by what he heard. Wanna has become a sworn sister of Senior Marshal Brother Cheng. That's right. It is as I said. Once we repel the spell warriors, we will openly conduct the Tao ceremony for you too. Even if any doubts later surface, the matter will already be done. Who would dare to seek trouble from the entire Heavenly Tao Alliance? Even if Wei Wuya were to personally know of this matter, he would only be able to forcibly ignore the matter as we were war allies. Besides, you've also made quite the name for yourself. The Flowing Mind sect and the Masked Moon sect will likely ignore this matter. Having heard this, Han Li grew silent and a complicated expression appeared on his face. Then with a light sigh, he slowly said, "For my matters, I have troubled my two senior martial brothers greatly. I will take it to heart." Han Li's simple words were much to the delight of Lu Luo. He and his senior martial brother had spent no small amount of effort to win over Han Li's feelings. With those words, it was most likely impossible for Han Li to be roped over to Yellow Maple Valley. In a display of complete intimacy, Lu Luo continued, We consider junior martial brother Han to be one of our own, not some outsider. Ah yes, Lady Nangong was somewhat worried when she heard you went missing and felt the need to rush here herself. It was only through immense effort that senior martial brother Cheng was able to hold her back. After all, there are Mei cultivators from the Flowing Mind sect and the Masked Moon sect here, and you've yet to officially become Tao companions. It'd be best if Fairy Nangong isn't recognized. As for junior martial brother Han's concubine, I've had her escorted back to the sect, as it will be dangerous in the upcoming battle. Chapter 750. Conditions. Han Li felt somewhat apprehensive at the thought of Mu Piling and Nangong Wan meeting each other. However, he merely uttered a few words of thanks to Lu Luo. What does junior martial brother Han plan on doing now? According to the arrangements, you no longer need to participate in any upcoming battles due to your previous service. However, a few days ago, the Righteous and Devilish Tao, the Nine Nations Union, and our Heavenly Tao Alliance held a meeting with regards to war countermeasures, and junior martial brother Han was mentioned. Since you were able to slay the Black-Robed Spell Warrior in an instant, his techniques will be certainly capable of restraining the other Black-Robed Spell Warriors. As such, they hoped junior martial brother would be able to participate in the battle soon to come. Lu Luo then revealed a hesitant expression before continuing. The representative of the Heavenly Tao Alliance also believes that junior martial brother will be a great military asset, and that it would be inexcusable if he doesn't fight. That is, somewhat to Lu Luo's surprise, Han Li didn't reveal any anger. Instead, he coldly smiled and asked, I find it acceptable to continue fighting. If the Heavenly South was to be truly occupied by the Mulan, nothing good would result of it for our Drifting Cloud sect. However, how will the previous agreement be dealt with? Surely it won't just be waved away with solely words. Lu Luo bitterly smiled and said, Of course not. With the addition of junior martial brother's merits of slaying the black-robed cultivator and ferreting out the Mulan spy, the Alliance promises that it will adhere to any conditions junior martial brother will raise, given that he continues to fight in the war. So long as these conditions are fulfillable, they will attempt to satisfy you as much as they can as compensation. Han Li's expression stirred for a moment, but he remained calm. They are willing to compensate me? That is easy to say, but I'll need to have a discussion about these specific conditions with the person in charge. Lu Luo smiled and said, That is also good. I was just about to bring junior martial brother to go see the acting leaders of the Heavenly Tao Alliance. So long as your conditions aren't excessive, they should be willing to agree. Han Li smiled and slowly said, Be at ease, senior martial brother Lu. I will not attempt to overreach myself and make it difficult for you. Seeing that Han Li understood to act within reason, he felt relieved and said, Junior martial brother must be joking. There is no need to give consideration for my sake. This is a rare display of generosity from those old folks. You shouldn't hold back. When Han Li heard this, he wore a mysterious smile and said nothing further. Afterwards, Lu Luo promptly led Han Li out of the Drifting Cloud sect's encampment and directly head to the Heavenly Tao Union's official hall. Our Heavenly Tao Alliance's acting leaders are a coalition of tensome elders from various large sects. They are replaced every interval of 10 years. Of course, this doesn't apply to the 3 founding sects of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, the Ancient Sword sect, the Phoenix Cry sect, and the Sailing Boundaries Study. In truth, these three sects have the most sway over the Alliance. And amongst them, the Phoenix Cry sect is a cut above the Ancient Sword sect and the Sailing Boundaries Study in terms of power. Surely you should know of fellow Taoists Feng Bing and Long Han of the Phoenix Cry sect? They are Tao companions that are capable of contending against a late nascent soul cultivator. It is because of these two that we are capable of rivaling the other three factions. However, only fellow Daoist Long Han has revealed himself as Elder Feng Bing immediately entered seclusion upon arriving at Sky First City. It appeared as if she was at a crucial period of cultivating some secret technique. So long as Junior Marshal Brother Han has a proper discussion with the acting leaders of the Alliance that are currently in the city, they should surely be agreeable. I also have to mention that Elder Long Han is currently amongst the three acting leaders in the city. As Lu Luo walked by Han Li's side, he gave him an explanation of the workings of the Heavenly Tao sect. Some of this information was new to Han Li. As such, he simply nodded as he silently listened. The Heavenly Tao Alliance's official hall was located in the center of the west part of the city. In a calm walk, Han Li and Lu Luo soon arrived there. It was an imposing stone hall that was surrounded by many towers. Clearly recognizing Lu Luo, the Foundation establishment cultivators guarding the hall respectfully saluted him. One of them stepped forward and said, "Greetings, Senior Lu. Which elders have you come to see? And who might this senior be?" Their expressions grew hesitant when they saw Han Li's unfamiliar face. Lu Luo's expression remained calm as he calmly said, "This is my fellow sect Elder Han, and I've come to see Elder Long and the others." "Ah, so it was Senior Han. Please wait a moment. The elders are currently discussing something in the hall. I will report to them immediately." The cultivator was shocked and glanced at Han Li with astonishment, his expression growing more respectful. It was clear he knew of Han Li's reputation. The cultivator soon took out a sound transmission talisman and whispered something into the talisman before tossing it into the air. A short moment after it shot inside as a streak of red light, 3 melodious rings rang from the hall. When the guards heard this, they immediately bowed. "Please enter, seniors. The elders already know that you've arrived." Lu Luo nodded and boldly walked into the hall. Han Li calmly followed after him. After passing through several corridors, Lu Luo brought Han Li into a side chamber where 6 nascent soul cultivators were currently seated. When the two walked in, all 6 of them glanced over. However, most of their gazes were focused on Han Li, each with an interested expression. Each of their cultivations was unordinary, but when Han Li looked at them, his attention was caught by the middle-aged man that was sitting in the center of the room. His clothes were gray, his appearance odd, and his stature wide. His cultivation was also at the peak of mid-nascent stage, a considerable distance above ordinary mid-nascent soul cultivators. He was just 1 step away from entering late-nascent soul stage. Han Li's heart trembled, immediately realizing that this person was the Phoenix Cry sect's Long Han. With such profound cultivation, it was no wonder he was able to contend against late-nascent soul cultivators with his wife. He had originally believed the rumors were over-exaggerated, not the other way around. As the others remained silent, the middle-aged man beamed and stood up. With a salute, he said, "Brother Lu, this must be your sect's Elder Han. In the past few days, we've heard much of your thunderous repute." After giving the middle-aged man an appraising glance, Han Li returned the salute and smiled. "So you must be Long Han. I too have long heard of your famous name." Sitting at Long Han's side, an old man with pale complexion half-jokingly said, "If we're speaking of reputation, recently fellow Daoist Han is much more famous. You've given our Heavenly Tao Alliance much face. This fellow Daoist is quite humorous. May I know your name?" Han Li had already taken note of the old man as he was the only mid-nascent soul cultivator in the room apart from Long Han. He didn't dare to slight him. Before the old man could reply, Lu Luo rushed to introduce him. "Junior Marshal Brother Han, this is Brother Kwong of the Sailing Boundaries Study. His heavenly earth arts have repeatedly shaken the continent for several hundreds of years." Astonished, Han Li said, "So it turned out to be Brother Kwong. I've also held you in much admiration for a long time." Han Li's words weren't lies. This old man was truly renowned, and was second in the Heavenly Tao Union only to Long Han and his Tao companion. Of course, the Drifting Cloud sect elder Cheng had repeatedly mentioned them in the past, but Han Li didn't think he would actually meet them. Afterwards, Lu Luo introduced the other cultivators to Han Li. They weren't particularly noteworthy apart from the ancient sword sect elder, an ugly man surnamed Qian, who Han Li particularly took notice of. With the introductions over, they all took a seat. Long Han smiled and calmly said, "Since fellow Daoist Han has come to visit the official hall, he should know of our wishes for him to continue fighting in the war. In truth, we did break our previous promise. But with war approaching, your abilities will prove to be of great strength for the cultivators of the Heavenly South. We have no other choice. But as compensation, we will provide you with materials, medicine pills, and such for your trouble. Fellow Daoist Han, if you are still unwilling, we can further discuss this. So long as it is possible for your alliance, we will not refuse you." Long Han deserved his title as the cultivator who ruled the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Before Han Li could even mention why he had come, he already took the initiative to apologize to Han Li. He would be put in a bad position if he were to reveal his objections. However, Han Li wasn't angry to begin with. Having escaped from the hands of the Mulan divine sage, he had proved he should have more than enough strength to spare to preserve his life when a battle turned for the worse. Since he had no worries over his survival, he didn't have much to be unhappy about. Rather, he felt that this was a rare opportunity. As a result, Han Li pondered for a moment before bluntly speaking, "Since Brother Long said this, I will not object to continuing to fight. After all, I do understand this war is for the survival of the Heavenly South. However, there are some things that I will require from the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Therefore, I will bluntly take advantage of this opportunity." When Han Li said this, he appeared calm. He knew that these old eccentrics were extremely sharp, and felt that it would be easier to handle such matters directly. As expected, his honest words left a positive impression on most of the cultivators in the room. The cultivator surnamed Kwong was particularly happy, and he honestly replied, "Fellow Daoist Han's quick and direct words are very much to my liking. Please tell us of your conditions. I am quite curious." Long Han's expression wavered several times before he silently smiled. As for the others, they all glanced at Han Li, wondering what it was that he wanted. With an indifferent expression, Han Li calmly said, "It is quite simple. I hope to draw support from the Alliance to help me find a certain type of tool refinement material. I won't hide this from you. This item is extremely important to me. If you are able to gather together these items for me before the grand battle, I will have more confidence in dealing with those black-robed cultivators." Tool refinement material. Those in the room glanced at each other, none revealing surprise. They all knew of materials that were certainly precious and difficult to find. Why wouldn't Han Li want to use this opportunity to seek them out?